Good morning. I was just looking through the tweet stream from the summit, and I don't know this guy, but I think he summed up how I'm feeling pretty well. Kevin Wilkes says, note to self, when I speak at a conference, make sure @Shingy doesn't present before me at any point in the day. Hashtag iMedia Summit, wow. Yeah, so Kevin, wherever you are, I agree completely. So we're faced with this challenge of following all these great presentations this morning, but my name's Fetters. I'm from the Kellogg company, and I will grab the clicker, and I'll start by telling a little story about, this is all about, how do we assess the impact of branded content across the web. A couple years ago when I joined Kellogg, one of my first responsibilities was to consult with one brand in particular, was the Tarts brand. I don't know if any of you, I know iMedia provided breakfast for everyone this morning, but did anyone happen to start their day with a Kellogg product? Kellogg cereal, Pop-Tarts, I think? Oh, thank you very much. One day closer to retirement. So I worked very close with the Pop-Tart brand on building their digital strategy. And I remember this one day that actually, not even the agency, the brand manager kind of came and said, hey, we've got this, we're about to launch this new campaign, Crazy Good. We're going back to Crazy Good. It's a great idea. And we're going to build a lot of digital content to go along with this campaign. It's going to be awesome, right? And we're going to do games, we're going to do videos, all this cool stuff that the consumers will love, and it really fits with the campaign idea, the Crazy Good idea really well. I said, oh, that's cool, that sounds interesting. How are we going to know if this is really working for us? Well, we'll measure engagement, and how much time they spend with it. Okay, that's cool. What's that worth? How many boxes of Pop-Tarts will people buy if they spend an extra minute with your game? I don't know, but that's what we'll measure. Okay, all right. Well, where's this content going to live? Oh, we're going to build, you know what? We're going to build a new microsite. Really? Okay. And get this. You know what the URL for the new microsite's going to be? No, tell me. PopTartsCrazyGood.com. Oh, that's great. That's great. And so no one's ever been to this microsite. No one knows that it exists. Yeah, but we're going to link to it from our website and our Facebook account. Okay, so how many people do you think will come consume our content on PopTartsCrazyGood.com? I don't know. Okay, so what you're saying is we have some very good content. We don't know what it's worth. We don't know how many people are going to see it. Yeah, that's it. Okay, I think there's probably a better way, right? So that's where we get to where we're at today. And my job, largely at Kellogg, is to say, hey guys, how are we going to figure out if where we place our investments, where we place our bets, is really driving boxes of cereal, boxes of Pop-Tarts, boxes of Cheez-It off the shelf, right? Is this really working? And it starts with our framework. And if you've ever been around me, I've used this basic framework is really what we focus on when we talk about effectiveness. And we can tweak it here and there, but the ideas are the same, right? It's all about, do we have quality content? Do we have the right content? Does our creative really even have a right to succeed? We have to understand that. And whether that's through testing or if it's just through good insights about, hey, consumers really resonate to this message, then we still need to understand, is this the right content? Did we reach the right audience? Are we talking to the right consumers? Are we hitting them? Are we targeting them? Are they seeing our content? That's a question, and we have to answer that and measure that. And then finally, is it having the right impact? So are we being effective, and is the content that we put out to the right consumers having the intended impact that we wanted it to have, right? That's the framework, and we develop the KPIs around that to go and say, well, is what we're doing really effective? Now, a couple years ago, our brands have started to really get into digital in a big way, so they're investing pretty heavily in digital, but they were doing it primarily through paid media, and we said, you know what? We think as a digital kind of COE, we believe that we need to convince the brands to do more in the area of what we would call owned and earned content. So it's not just paid. We need to get out there and we need to do things that are owned and earned. So we participated with Yahoo in a study. Actually, ComScore ran the study for us to say, what is the incremental impact of consumers being exposed to not only paid digital media, but also owned and earned? Owned being our website or our Facebook primary page, earned being exposed to their friends' activity in interacting with the Pop-Tarts brand. When we did that, we saw that we knew that paid content drives things like top-of-mind awareness. We know that that works. Otherwise, we wouldn't invest in paid digital media. So we knew that worked, but it was fascinating when we saw the incremental impact of consumers who were exposed to not just paid, but also owned and earned content from the Pop-Tart brand. So you can see there's a really big difference between those who are exposed to multiple channels of content. And we're using this to kind of fuel our story to the brands and say, hey guys, we need to be investing in more content than just paid. Now, we do have to keep our foot on the pedal with paid, because here's the deal. While paid and earned drives a much bigger lift in sales, in offline sales, when you can get people exposed to it, the reality is we're only reaching people primarily through paid, as I said today, right? So if you look at the index of total dollar sales, paid is a 541 index versus those who are exposed to paid and earned, simply because of the reach. And this is, I think Bill started the day, he talked about we need big ideas. And the same thing goes here. We can talk about content until we're blue in the face, but if it doesn't reach a big audience, if it's not a big idea, it has a very minimal impact, right? So we've got to do stuff that has scale, it has reach. And that's one of the core pieces that we measure then is it scalable? Are we reaching a broad audience, right? And so to do that, we partner with ComScore, and Judy's going to talk about some of the capabilities.
So I guess I have to be on the David bandwagon and just thank Aaron and the Kellogg's team for being in the Riptides with us. I don't think when I think of Riptides, I think them being very violent, and I don't see our relationships being that tumultuous, but we're definitely heading in a direction, and we're able to make changes fairly real time for the Kellogg's company. So my role right now is just to give you some background before I hand it back over to Aaron, where he'll show steady results, to give you a perspective of where we fit in this paradigm for Kellogg's. And really, it's about powering their matrix that Aaron just alluded to at the beginning of his talk on how they see how setting up the measurement framework should look like for any particular brand. And what's unique is that that is really tailored to the brand objectives and needs. So depending on the project, you would see us powering pretty much across the continuum for Kellogg's brands, where we look at measurement of actual performance, where we look at digital targeting or viewability, or looking to see if we actually delivered the right demographics for a specific campaign, and do real-time optimization. Aaron will talk a little bit more of how that actually impacts Pop-Tarts. We look at effectiveness. So not only saying what's the what's, what are the whys, what do we see within the key objectives of breakthrough or impact or actually site visitation, and then closing the loop to showing the actual return on investment. So I could talk ad nauseum about the ComScore products that power this, but we just thought for the benefit of everyone's time today is to just kind of bare minimum talk a little bit about what's at the basis of this framework, which is the ComScore, what we call UDM, the Unified Digital Measurement System. We bring 1.5 trillion digital interactions from publisher sites, as well as we manage a 2 million person global panel where we're getting demographic and online interactions, search patterns of our panelists, and we bring those two key components together. So at the bare minimum, when we're talking about the results that we're seeing, that's what ComScore is bringing to Kellogg's. So with that.
All right. So now what we're doing, let's come back to Pop-Tarts. What are we doing today on a brand like Pop-Tarts, right? Well, number one, we're making sure that Pop-Tarts has the right content across not just paid, but owned and earned channels as well. So we are this crazy good campaign. It's a fantastic campaign. It's great creative. It's very humorous. It's just spot on for the Pop-Tart consumer. Hopefully some of you have been exposed to it, although you're not actually in the demographic of our Pop-Tart consumer necessarily, but hopefully if you do see it, it is great content. You can see we have obviously digital media, we have mobile media, but we also we're extending the same idea into owned spaces, right? So the top piece there is something that we would use on our Facebook postings, but we've even partnered with groups like Live Nation to offer music downloads, and that's content that the brand is bringing, right? And further to that, we partnered with Live Nation to bring free concerts to Pop-Tart consumers. So we're creating content through something like a concert, and we're making sure that all of this content then lives in a place that consumers can interact with it, and they can talk about it, and they can share, they can upload their photos from the concerts to Instagram and hashtag them with Crazy Good. And so we generate the earned media as well. So what Pop-Tarts is doing now, I think, is a great example of taking content, taking an idea, right? Do we have the right content? Yes, we have this idea of Crazy Good. And we're extending that then beyond just paid media and into the owned and the earned space in a way that the consumers really resonates very well with consumers. We're also making sure we reach the right consumers. So Judy just referenced the ComScore panel and the capabilities that we have there. It's fascinating. So this is actually the Pop-Tart consumer. This is a picture from one of the concerts that they've put on. I think that one was in LA, actually, fairly recently. So a bunch of screaming teenagers. That's exactly who we want to hit, right? All those consumers were exposed to the Pop-Tart message because they're at a Pop-Tart branded concert. But what we do is we work with ComScore to look at our media plan as it's in flight, and in the digital space, we would say, how well are our various publishers indexing against that teen demographic? Where can we go and up our game and do a better job of getting to that right consumer? And then you see also the percent in view, which is a fascinating thing. You guys, viewability is a hot topic in the industry. I'm sure you've seen some different articles about it. I think the reality is, when you dig into it, it's surprising how out of view a lot of our ads are, right? And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to find where are the opportunities to bring those numbers up, and how do we up the bets there and optimize out of the placements and pieces where we're just not getting the viewability, right? And so you can see these are actually really great results. The 343 means that we are 3.4 times as effective as hitting teens on the internet as if we just ran a run of internet, right? So if you just scattered your impressions around the internet, you'd expect a 100. We're at a 343. So we're doing a great job there. Pop-Tarts is getting their content to the right people. And are they having the right impact? So we go a step further and we say, okay, well, we're gonna invest in a little bit of research and survey the people who are exposed to our Pop-Tart Crazy Good content. And if we look at our results that we've seen for the display and the video in the online space, it's fantastic results. You can see there, these are the kind of the key metrics that we really care about. I think Bill said it earlier, it's like you've got to persuade consumers. You've got to make them aware of you, and you've got to persuade them. And these metrics here tell us that, yes, Pop-Tarts is making consumers aware of the brand, and they're persuading them. And we went beyond that, and we're even doing some research on the mobile side. And we took the mobile components of our campaign, and we said, how effective is our mobile campaign being right now at convincing consumers that Pop-Tarts is a brand for them? And we're seeing fantastic results there as well, right? So again, we continue to feel like if you got the right content, you get it to the right consumers, it can have the right impact. But we want to do that across not just paid, but across all the channels in the online space, and that's what we're trying to achieve today. So I think that's it. Yes, early learning results. So let's go back to that initial conversation of, well, how many people are going to see it? What's engagement worth? What's time spent worth? So now that we're able to focus in on real metrics, like reach, like the target audience, like viewability, we're able to tie these then to our market mix models and our other kind of econometric modeling that says, all right, did we actually sell boxes of Pop-Tarts? And when we do that, and we look at some of the approaches that we're taking in the digital space, programmatic buying, for example. Programmatic buying has enabled us to get that 345 index or whatever, right? Because we're able to use data and find the target audiences we want. And when we look at the return that we're getting on those campaigns, it's incredible. The first couple of brands that we modeled in our mixes where we really applied programmatic in a big way, you can see we're seeing 5 and 6x returns versus where we had been previous to that. And then when we look at viewability, and this one's really fascinating, when you are able to impact viewability and you're able to take a campaign that's like less than 50% in view and just move it to at least 70% in view, what we're seeing is a 168 index on those type of campaigns, which means that it's even a disproportionate benefit to get your ads in view. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio, it's even more than that, right? It's like, I think it was a 40% lift in viewability leads to a 68% lift in effectiveness of that campaign at driving product off the shelf. That's incredible, and that tells us that, wow, this is something we really need to put a big bet in, and we need to go focus on that kind of a metric and make our campaigns better from that standpoint. And I think that is
That's it.
all we have. So thank you very much.
Okay.
We actually have time for one or two questions for you guys.
Questions?
Any questions?
There you go. First one.
Was there any offline media running?
Yeah, definitely. Pop-Tarts is very cross-channel advertising campaign, the Crazy Good campaign. We do a lot of work actually with MTV. We were kind of integrated with the VMAs, other offline media as well. So it's definitely a multi-channel campaign, the Crazy Good idea, and it's been a really great campaign for the brand.
We have one more in the back.
All the way back there.
Hi, my question is, you mentioned you do some econometric modeling and market mix modeling. How do these results relate to those? Because we have always had a problem making the two reconcile.
Yeah, and, what I say, my job, I describe my job as finding the metrics that are most indicative of that eventual market mix model result, right? So the great thing about market mix models is they tell you what happened, okay? The bad thing is they don't tell you why it happened. And that's why I think it's so important to have a framework of metrics that are in between, when you launch and do a market mix model a year later. We are trying to hone in on the metrics that are most indicative of driving market mix effectiveness, volume per impression, right? And what we're finding is, and that's the point on the viewability slide, viewability, as an example, is one of the most indicative metrics of what market mix will eventually tell us was an effective campaign. Target index, how well we were able to actually find the target is another very indicative metric of success. And honestly, quite honestly, just simple reach is a very, very indicative metric that will eventually lead to a market mix success. We see so many campaigns that, and again, this is one of my issues with content. When we talk about content, we end up building these deep, engaging experiences that 10,000 people come to. Well, 10,000 people can only buy so many boxes of Pop-Tarts or Special K or whatever it is. We've got to reach a broad audience as a CPG marketer. We've got to reach a broad audience, and that reach number ends up being one of the most indicative numbers of in-market success, very simply put.
I think it's also fair to say that we've seen that pieces of the data that you guys have pulled into, from a measurement perspective, are actually now going into the mixed models. We've seen that with many advertisers. And that data set is actually enriching their models and showing the true impact of digital across the continuum. So that's another point to make.
Yeah,
All right, let's get a round of applause for Aaron and Judy.